Hello and welcome back to the GB Fantasy Football channel. In today's video, we're going to be looking at a big differential one. This is players who are under 10% owned currently in Sun Dream Team. Now, it's only 3 game weeks in, but getting that extra little bit of help, getting that little bit of an edge on top of your leaderboards, on top of your opponents in those leaderboards could be extremely handy. So we'll get to all that in just a minute. But before I go on, I'd like to thank you very much for the support on the channel. Please drop a subscribe if you can. We're approaching 1.5k very quickly. Hit the thumbs up, greatly appreciated. Pushes the video out to all Sun Dream Team players and all FPL players. Just gets the channel out there and it would be greatly appreciated. And hit the bell icon. Go ahead, complete the perfect hat trick. Make sure you don't miss an upload in your sub box. And without further ado, let's crack on with the video. Once again, the Sun Dream Team League code is in the description below. Go check it out. Go join. There's plenty of people in. There's lots of competition out there. With each week, normally I will put the top 10 leaderboard at the end of a video. So if you'd like the chance to be in a video in future, potentially if your points are up there in the top 10, go ahead, jump in. Lots of fun, lots of people. And yeah, it's down there in the description below. As you can see on the screen though, in this video, we're going to be looking at some differentials. Now to me, differentials currently are players under 10% owned. Anything over that, you're turning and looking into a demographic of player that is potentially owned by too many people. Of course, anything over 10%, you're still going to get a smaller increase. You're still going to go up in the leaderboard, but under 10%, whenever those players are hitting points, you do notice a much bigger increase in your rank. Now we're going to go through goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders and attackers. So each category will be covered and I've gone for 5 players in each selection. For reference, dark red, I believe is not a very good statistic. And the darkest shade of green, I think is the opposite end of the scale. And I think that is definitely one to look out for. Orange being the middle ground. Now for goalkeepers, I've gone for Allison, Sells, Henderson, Vicario and Pope. Now you'll notice a theme within the players today. There are a few exceptions across the list, but for me, European players are the ones to target currently. We're going to go into double season, double game weeks going forward, and with these goalkeepers, players in general, that's what we want. We want to be targeting the 2 fixtures a week. Yes, some single game week players might have a Burnley at home or a Leeds at home, but for me, 2 fixtures always over 1. Now let's start with Allison. 4.1 million, 9.1% owned. Only expected goals conceded so far in the first 3 fixtures of 3.2 and 3.7 average points per game. Decent across the board, a lot of orange, a smidge of green. Liverpool as a defensive unit of only conceding 3.2 expected goals is quite a surprise considering I watched that opening game at home to Bournemouth. It was really good. But defensively wise, they left a lot to be desired without Gravenberch in that number 6 role. Of course, playing Arsenal at the weekend just gone wasn't great. Arsenal didn't really create much going forward, so I suppose that's why that statistic is much lower than we probably would expect it to be. Sells up next, 3.3 million currently in price. Of course, all these players are going to fluctuate. I've not necessarily taken into consideration price decreases or increases. This is strictly them as an asset. Now, for reference, I'm recording this on the 3rd of September, so the ownership could have gone up by the time this video comes out. So that's one to note. But currently, Sells 3.3 million, a really good price. Now, I think at the start of last season, I had him in my team and it was 3 million then. So to get him at a 3.3, potentially he might get a decrease. Of course, Forest conceded 3 goals to West Ham in the game week 3, but 3.3 million for a Forest goalkeeper, I think he will play. Of course, with players like Sells and Henderson and Pope, not as much Pope, but we'll get to him in just a minute. Sells and Henderson are in the Europa League and Conference League respectively. Will they rotate goalkeepers? Will Forest bring in their backup? Will Palace play someone like, I think it's Benitez they brought on a free transfer over the summer? Will he play instead of Henderson? I can't see it, but we'll get to him in just a little while. Sells 3.3 million, 9.1% owned. Expected goals conceded currently of 5. Now that is very un-Forest like and only averaging 2.3 points per game, which is awful. It really is. For saying that you get 2 points just for turning up, it's definitely not what we expected from Sells as a goalkeeper asset. But the reason why he's on this list is I fully expect Forest to improve as a defensive unit. Of course, their Europa League fixtures are going to be slightly easier than Premier League fixtures, but the start of the season can't be dismissed completely. Henderson of Palace, 3.5 million, 8.5% owned, 3.7 expected goals conceded so far, very respectable, and 6.3 points average. That's an incredible statistic. Palace have started the season exceptionally well. Of course, Mark Gay is now staying, so that really will solidify that back five. But for Henderson, he's very much on the shortlist. Vicario, 4.1 million, 7.7% owned, 4.1 expected goals conceded. Now, this statistic could easily be read. However, it's not. Tottenham have only conceded one goal so far this season. Game week 1 and game week 2 were both clean sheets. Game week 3, they lost at home to Bournemouth 1-0. So to have an expected goals conceded of 4.1 and only have one goal conceded, you could say they're defensively strong. You could say they're turning a new leaf. But to have those figures so vastly different, I'd suggest an element of luck. Don't get me wrong, I think Tottenham have improved as a defence under Thomas Frank. They do look a lot more stable. Palhinha in that number 6 role at the base of the midfield. You've got Pap Sarr knocking about, a lot of legs in midfield, Bentancur as well. And then you've got the youth of Bergvall and Gray. But you can't dismiss 4.1 expected goals conceded so far. And I'd be intrigued to see if that trend continues. 6.4 average points, a lot of save points for Vicario. 2 clean sheets, as I've mentioned, one to watch out for the Champions League. And Nick Pope, now he is a slight anomaly in my eyes. 3.8 million in price is a really good one. I think he's expected to go up. Of course, they drew, I think, 0-0 away to Leeds in game week 3. I think that was the game anyway, unless I'm getting them all mixed up. 3.8 million, 5.1% owned, 1.6 expected goals in the first 3 games. Bearing in mind they have played Villa away and Liverpool at home in those 2 fixtures is an outstanding statistic, and 6 points average so far for Pope. Now, the reason why Pope is an anomaly is because Aaron Ramsdale is sitting on the bench for Newcastle. Now, I expect Ramsdale to get some minutes. He wouldn't have gone to Newcastle on the basis of just sitting on the bench every game. But in a World Cup year, he's going to want some time on the pitch. Whether that comes in the Champions League, he will play the cup competitions, in my opinion. He'll play the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup when that comes around. But I can see for some reason Eddie Howe playing Aaron Ramsdale in some Champions League games. Of course, Ramsdale did qualify for the Champions League for Arsenal. Never played in it, so I think that will be one of his goals. But Pope, if he is in goal, if you can select the right Newcastle goalkeeper, I think they are defensively sound. The midfield is always strong, and a lot more attacking reinforcements now with Visser and the player who's just come from the Bundesliga, who I won't pronounce. I've not quite got that under control yet. But Newcastle, there looks to be a bit of stability at the back. Next up, we are moving on to the defenders. As you can see, once again, targeting those European double game week players for game week 4 and beyond. First up, Christian Romero of Tottenham. 3.8 million in price. I actually thought it'd be a little bit more expensive than this. It does quite well on the tackles front. 9.2% ownership, 4.1 expected goals, as we spoke about with Vicario on the first slide. I'm intrigued to see how that data and trend continues or gets booked in the opposite direction. 6.3 average points per game so far is really good return. Of course, 2 clean sheets out the first 3. A few tackle points here and there for Romero. He is one to watch with the Champions League campaign coming around. Kirkez, 4.8 million, would have been in a lot of our teams at the start of the campaign, along with Frimpong. Of course, Frimpong is currently injured on the sidelines. 5.8% ownership for Kirkez, decent amount. 3.2 expected goals conceded for Liverpool, which is really good. 5.7 average points per game. Nothing to be sniffed at, and that is a solid return so far. Whether or not he will just share minutes with Andy Robertson when the bulk of the fixtures come out and they've got a game every 4 days, I think Robertson will take minutes, so that does go against Kirkez. But for whatever reason, Kirkez is the nailed on one and Robertson picks up a niggling injury, I think he comes to the forefront of our attention. very much so. Next up, Gabriel of Arsenal, 5.2 million, which is on the pricier side of things. I'd put him in that premium range. 4.6% ownership, which is quite low considering how decently Arsenal have done so far defensively. I think the majority would have veered towards Calafiori with his points. The lucky ones out there would have got Timber's points, of course, in game week 2. Gabriel, only 2.2 expected goals conceded for Arsenal, just goes to show once again what a solid defensive unit they actually are. Didn't look like conceding against Liverpool too much. Of course, Szoboszlai's free kick stuck in the top corner from 30 yards out. It's going to be low on the XGC scale, I should say. But I think when the doubles are coming around, Arsenal should very much be looked at, and 6 points average per game. But for that 5.2 million price bracket, can you get slightly more points to price million? I think you can, but definitely want to note Ezri Konsa, an anomaly on this graph. 4 million in price, only 1.3% owned. Now, if you played the game last year, you'll know full well when Villa were in the Champions League campaign, Konsa was the one constant pretty much. The fullbacks used to change, the other centre half used to change, but it was either Konsa or Emi Martinez in goal that you tended to go towards if you wanted a doubler that was nailed on. Of course, Konsa this season, he picked up the red card in game week 1, so his statistics are slightly skewed. 5.3 expected goals conceded so far for Villa is really poor. Now, I knew they'd been poor offensively, but clearly defensively, they've also been a shambles. Only 2 points average per game as well. I wouldn't expect that to continue going forward. I do feel as though when the Europa League comes round, Villa will buck up their ideas. I think Konsa will play the majority of those minutes and the Premier League minutes. And I think he's a safe asset going forward. Only 4 million. He's on the pricier side of things. I actually thought he'd be closer to 3.5 million. But definitely a solid option. And finally, Malo Gusto. Now, this one is always an interesting one. I had a lot of questions about him at the start of the campaign, and I always felt that going for him, despite his cheaper price, was a risk with Reece James around the corner, lurking with intent. That is still the case, but it seems like Gusto is getting a fair few minutes in this Chelsea team. And for 2.8 million, which is an incredible price considering how much the prices over the summer got boosted ahead of the new Sun Dream Team season. So to pick up a Chelsea defender for 2.8 million could be a gold mine. 3.7% owned, so not massive. Definitely on the low side of things. 2.4 expected goals conceded so far for Chelsea is a really good statistic. They've played Palace, they've played West Ham, they've done well, they've played Fulham. Only 2.4, solid option. Only 4.3 average points per game. I think that was because he didn't start 1 out of the 3 fixtures. If I'm wrong, comment down below. But if for some reason Reece James picks up one of his many injuries that he tends to do, Malo Gusto could be an essential part of our teams going forward. Moving on to the midfielders, we have a few outliers at the bottom that I'll get to in just a minute. Starting off with Enzo Fernandez. Now, he was a solid pick at the back end of last season. He was one of the players that actually got me and bumped me up to 3rd in the world with that last game in the Conference League final. I ended up with Enzo Fernandez, Cole Palmer and Marc Cucurella. Once again, he started the season really well. First game, nothing too much to shout about at home to Palace. Since then, the man's been on fire performance-wise. 4.6 million in price, 8.9% owned. So he is currently becoming and going onto people's radar. That ownership has crept up slightly since game week 3. Expected goal involvement of 2.19 in just 3 games. Yes, he did take the penalty against Fulham in game week 3, so that would have boosted that up substantially. But we know he's second in line when Cole Palmer isn't on the pitch, and we do think that Cole Palmer will be back in game week 4, but if he isn't, you'd assume Enzo Fernandez is once again on penalties. 9.7 average points per game is outrageous. You're looking at nearly double digits per fixture. Now, if you was to be offered that at the start of each game week, you'd take that, you snap your hand off and you'd run away very quickly with those points. Will he do this consistently? I actually think he will be very high on the point scoring wise. This isn't even including the bonus points because currently so far this season he's been low on that front. He's not really amassed any points via the bonus point system. Compared to last season, that's what he was doing. So once that kicks into gear, if he continues to get involved with the goals and the assists, I think he might become essential. I don't like using that word, but in that Chelsea system, he seems to thrive a lot, and Chelsea are scoring lots of goals. So one to keep a keen eye on. Elliot Anderson of Nottingham Forest, of course, on FPL, the other fantasy game that I cover on the channel. A lot of you would have gone for him at the start of the campaign for those DEFCON numbers. Similar on this one, but not quite identical. 3.7 million in value, only 2.6% owned. Very good. 0.85 expected goal involvement, a little on the low on the low side in my opinion. I'd like at least over 1 in the first 3 fixtures, and then 6.3 points average over the first 3 game weeks. A lot of that is amassed tackles. In game week 3, he was picking up tackles left, right, and centre, and he's that combative midfielder with a creative edge as well. So he offers a lot of avenues to points. Oscar Bob for Manchester City, 3.6 million. He's played right wing. I think he started every fixture so far. 1.2% owned, very low. 0.76 expected goal involvements and 5 average points. Now, 5 average points is pretty average in my opinion. You get 2 for playing. You're probably picking up a bonus point. You're probably picking up a shot on target, maybe a chance created. But you've got to look at this and think, only 3.6 million. What else do we get on this game for 3.6 million? Not a lot. The problem with Oscar Bob is a certain Pep Guardiola. We do know Pep does love a little bit of Pep roulette. They've not started the season well at all. They've only won 1 out of the first 3, 2 defeats, at home to Tottenham, away in the last game to, forgot who it was now, Brighton. There we go. So they've stumbled through the first 3 game weeks. Whether or not he wants to continue with that same system, with the same players, is still yet to be seen. But Oscar Bob, if he starts in game week 4, definitely comes onto our radar of potential midfield options. Then we've got the 2 at the bottom. These are the outliers in the midfield section. Xavi Simons and Harvey Elliott. Of course, they both brand new transfers for their respective teams. Xavi Simons at Spurs, at Tottenham Hotspurs, and Harvey Elliott at Aston Villa, transferred from Liverpool. Xavi Simons, 4.5 million, 0.5% owned, and of course, no expected goal involvement or no average points, as he's yet to kick a ball for them. I think he's going to be heavily involved in what Tottenham do offensively wise. I don't know where he will exactly play. He might play in that number 10 role, drop Papsar back into the number 8 role with Palhinha or Bentancur in the number 6 position at the base of the midfield, or potentially he might start out wide on the left. I think he will start at the number 10 role. That's my gut instinct telling me that. I just wish he was 4 million. 4.5 million is a little on the expensive side. I mean, 4.6 million for Enzo Fernandez, when you know what sort of an asset you're getting, you know the points that he has to offer. There's just a lot more reliability there. 4.5 million for Simmons just strikes me as a smidge too much. In that 4 million range, it'd certainly be on my radar. But if you want to go there as a punt without much data to back it up, I think he's very much that vibe pick. If you want a bit of new blood into your team, I think he definitely ticks the boxes. And Harvey Elliott, of course, we know a little bit more about in this league. Did well for Liverpool last year when called upon. He scored a winner away at PSG. For some reason, that's springing to mind with regards to his performances last campaign. 3.5 million, so a million cheaper than Xavi Simons. 0.7% owned, so it's already creeping up ever so slightly. Obviously, no expected goal involvement and only 1 average point. He's only played 1 fixture so far this season for Liverpool, and he came on for a 1-minute cameo, I believe, away at Newcastle. So Harvey Elliott, where would he play for Aston Villa? That is the big question. Now, a lot of Aston Villa fans have said he will also play in that number 10 role, with Morgan Rogers shifting back out to that left-hand side where he did so well last season at times. Of course, Morgan Rogers can play in the number 10 position, but I feel like Harvey Elliott, despite his ability to play on the right-hand side of that front 3, will be deployed in more of a midfield number 10 role. and we've seen what he can produce for the under-21s for England. Will he play both in Villa's doubles with the Europa League campaign in the Premier League? Still yet to be seen. But if he starts well, similar to how Jack Grealish has started at Everton, he's going to quickly become an asset that slips into our teams and enables us to do a lot without money elsewhere. So Harvey Elliott and Xabi Simons, put them on the to be watched list and potential list. But I'm excited to see what kind of assets they are in Sun Dream Team. Last but by no means least, we've got the attackers on today's list. Now, these were the trickiest part of just the video in general. It seems like the template has well and truly been set. You've got your Victor Gyökeres, you've got your Erling Haalands, you've got your João Pedros, you've got your Salahs, your Ekitikes. But there are still a few diamonds in the rough. Of course, with Gyökeres, Havertz would certainly take away from his ownership, but he's currently injured. Let's get to the list though, shall we? Isaac, Mateta, Watkins, Igor Thiago and Marmoush. Now, as you can see, there is one outlier on this list, and that is Igor Thiago. All the other players in today's video have been Champions League, Europa League or Conference League based players for their doubles. But we'll get to him in just a little bit. Alexander Isak. Now, do I need to say much more about him? 6.5 million in price is a big chunk of change, especially if you've already got Salah and Haaland and Palmer and Saka's knocking about in your squads. If you've substituted out Palmer to keep him for game week 4, of course he comes back and eats into your budget. But Isak, already up to 5% owned. Of course, no expected goal involvements or average points this season. He's been on sabbatical, if you want to call it that. He's very much been out in the cold in Newcastle. No longer. Liverpool's new number 9, and he will be straight into the team, in my opinion. Whether or not he is in the number 9 position or playing off the left-hand side is still yet to be seen. Of course, moving from Newcastle to Liverpool, in my opinion, means that he loses penalties. Now, last season, penalties were nailed on for him. When he was at Newcastle, no one else was taking it off him. To me, Salah keeps him at Liverpool. He is the main man, and he has been for an awful long time. So I do think it will stay on his wand of a left foot. Although with penalties, normally with Salah, it's very hit and miss. But Isak as an asset, I feel like he won't get thrown in at the deep end. He will play in that opening game. I've just got that feeling he won't start, despite my gut instinct saying he will. You spend 125, 130 million on a new number 9, someone who you've chased for the entire transfer window. Can you ease him into your team? They've got Burnley away in game week 4, so that's a fantastic place to start. But do you gamble straight away on Isak playing that game? If you do, and he starts on the bench, are you in trouble straight away? Potentially. I'm hoping, from a selfish point of view, he gets a few cameo appearances off the bench. He doesn't score well, and that 6.5 million price drops under the 6 million mark. Will it? I'm not too sure, because I think once he gets going, he could be quite an asset on the game. But that's Alexander Isak. Mateta, Crystal Palace, 4.3 million, 4.5% owned, 1.57 expected goal involvement, which is pretty decent. Of course, a lot of that would have been the penalty in game week 3 away to Aston Villa, and 4.7 average points per game. It's a decent amount. Of course, that doesn't factor in Crystal Palace's Europa Conference League playoff fixtures where he scored. I think he scored anyway. Sometimes my brain melts. I know they kept 2 clean sheets in those fixtures. I think he will play in the Conference League fixtures going forward. Edin Nketiah still looks like he's got a knock, and I don't see another recognised centre forward at the club. So reliability for minutes until I'd say at least game week 7, game week 8, very much on the cards for Mateta, and he is their starting number 9. He is their prize asset in attack, dare I say, at the minute. Yes, they've got Yerry Pino. Yes, they've got Ismail Assar once he's back from injury. But you look at Mateta and think he is what they build that attack around, basically. His frame, his structure, his physicality. Moving on to Ollie Watkins. 5.2 million, quite pricey. 6.2% ownership. I do wonder how much of that ownership is still remaining from the start of the season. 1.24 expected goal involvement and only 2.7 points average per game at the minute. 2.7 points average per game is awful. It really is. That's less than turning up for the game, playing 60 minutes and having a shot on target. But you look at Villa's campaign and you look at what's to come with the Europa League, I think Watkins is just going to do well. He's just waiting for Aston Villa to kick into gear. Now, do you go a week early? Do you wait for them to score that illustrious first goal of the campaign? I think Watkins has a lot of historical data behind him, and it looks a bit like he perhaps wanted to move out of the club in the summer, and it didn't quite manifest itself. But now the transfer window's shut, I think he's going to score goals again. When that happens, hopefully sooner rather than later for those 6.2% of you that currently own him. But it's definitely one to watch. Igor Thiago, as I mentioned at the start of this little section, the only player out of all 4 slides that doesn't play in the Conference League, Europa League or Champions League. They have a double home fixture this week in Game Week 4 for the Carabao Cup. He scored really well. He started the season at 2.5 million. I looked at him in one of my early drafts and I thought, he's pretty decent, but I want to go top heavy for my budget. He's crept up he's crept up over 500,000 already, and I think he will rise again in price. Only 1.2% owned. That's an exceptionally low ownership. You're talking silly numbers. 1.68 expected goal involvements. Of course, these are from 4 fixtures rather than 3. He did play in the Carabao Cup second round. And 7.5 average points per game. That is an incredible return for a player who started the season at 2.5 million. When we was looking at differentials, we was looking at players like Carvalho in midfield. You was looking at other ones like Dewsbury Hall at 3 million, which is a player that I eventually went for. You was looking at other options like Jordan Henderson in midfield for around that same price. Perhaps he slid under the radar being an attacking asset rather than a midfielder or a defender. I mean, I went for players like Coyote from the same team for 2.5 million. Maybe I could have shifted someone like Jared Bowen backwards, that 5 million into defence and kept the 2.5 million for attack. Although Jared Bowen has done exceptionally well for me, so he isn't quite the ideal comparison there. But 2.5 million for that amount of points, it can't be overlooked, and that is why he had to make it into this draft for today's video. For those of you who do want to punt for that Carabao Cup double, I think he will play both. I think so far this season he has perhaps overperformed slightly, but we know he's on penalties. We know Brentford can score goals. They've got Dango Otaro, I believe it is. They recently signed from Bournemouth, and they're looking a bit lively up front again. So, Igor Thiago, leave a comment down below, and if he's spiced things up in your team and if he's grabbed your attention, he certainly did mine. And Marmoush of Manchester City being the final player in today's video. 4.6 million, 4% ownership, 1.28 expected goal involvement, and a semi-decent 5 average points per game. Now, a lot of this came in the last fixture away to Brighton. He picked up the assist and the big chance created for the Haaland goal. I do feel like he's either going to play on the left or the number 10 position. Currently, Tijani Reinders is filling that number 10 role, but I think they looked a lot better towards the back end of last campaign when he played that number 10 role with Doku out wide, and I think it was someone like Bernardo Silva out on the right, if my memory serves me correctly. Ilkay Gundogan has left, so that's a midfielder option gone. Nico Gonzalez, who was more of a number 6 in that midfield for Manchester City, has also left the club. So there are a few less options in that midfield. I do see O'Reilly, I believe it is. He's an option that wasn't a midfielder last season who has slipped into that role. Of course, he's a left back and a midfielder, so he does go between the 2 positions. But Marmoush, I think towards the back end of last season, he did the person who finished number 1 in the world, from what I remember, quite well. I think that goal from about 35 yards out where he stuck it in the top corner really helped them progress towards either second or first place. I do get it mixed up which one had him. But he was a punt then, and he's a punt now. He's not going to play the number 9 role. Haaland will play every game when he's fit. So Marmoush does have to fit around that position-wise. But to me, I think he offers a good differential route into that Man City attack. But, once again, pet roulette. And that does indeed conclude today's video. Bit of a differential one. Leave a comment down below on if any player today in these slides have taken your fancy. perhaps slipped into your transfer thoughts and maybe changed how you was going to go into game week 4 and beyond? Personally, I think the biggest one out of these 20 for me that really caught my eye, mainly due to the fact that I just didn't expect it in the slightest, was Igor Thiago. I didn't expect a Brentford asset at 2.5 million to score so well at the start of the season. For those of you who did go for him, I'm sure you're exceptionally exceptionally excited with what he has brought to your team, points wise and just contribution wise overall. I'm excited for the double game weeks to come up. Single game weeks, they're fun, they're exciting, but the doubles are really where it's at. You're watching the Premier League at the weekend, you're tuning into the Europa League, the Conference League, and the Champions League games within the week as well. And for game week 4, you can tune into the Carabao Cup fixtures as well. So much football to keep an eye on, and that is why I like Sun Dream Team as a fantasy game. It just keeps me intrigued and involved with every game that's on the TV. Leave a comment down below on how your season's going so far. And while you're there, check the description. My TikTok, X, and Instagram, they're all down there. Also, the Sun Dream Team League code, as I said at the start of the video. Go check it out. I think there's over 350, maybe even close to 400 people in it at the minute. And if you want a chance to get in a future video, try and get into that top 10. Thank you very much for watching today's video. Greatly appreciated. Hit the subscribe button. If you did enjoy today's content, hit the thumbs up button and hit the bell notification to complete the perfect hat trick. Thank you very much for watching, and you'll be seeing me in a new video very soon.